Trailblazers legend Bill Walton passes away at the age of 71. The Blazers are knee-deep in pre-draft workouts, and the NBA Finals are almost here. Welcome to the Blazer Focus Podcast. I am Aaron Fentress of the Oregonian OregonLive, and I'm joined by Craig Birnbach. And clearly, the Blazers in the NBA world saddened by the news of the passing of Walton, who died of cancer on Monday. Let's just go right into this, Craig. Your initial thoughts when you heard the news. We shot. I mean, I didn't know he was ill. Like I was totally blindsided.
So I remember talking to some people and saying that he hasn't spoken about the Pac-12 demise again. Like he had come out with some things, and I thought that made me wonder what's going on, because Bill Walton doesn't stay quiet for very long. You know, that's not his thing. So I didn't know he was sick, but I had a wondering, because I couldn't imagine the biggest cheerleader for the Conference of Champions to not be talking about what's going on and not continuing to voice his anger at what had happened. So, but yeah, when I saw that information pop up, I got a text on my phone when I was out with my wife and brother-in-law, and I was like, oh man, 71 too, and he was just so full of life, and just his life's amazing. I mean, his life is amazing. He had the thing about Bill Walton that I always loved, and it showed how he connected with people, is that everybody considered him theirs. And I say that because, I saw something from the San Diego Tribune, and they, I was like, I always think, I know he's from San Diego if you asked me,
right?
But I connect him with LA because of UCLA as far as that part of his life. And it is Southern California, but San Diego claimed him, UCLA claimed him, Portland claimed him, Boston claimed him, bicyclists claimed him, hippies claimed him, Grateful Dead people claimed him,
The TV world claimed him.
TV world, commentary, broadcasting, like people with speech impediments, people with back pain. Like he just connected so many people like a spoke of a wheel. And so that is a tribute to his ability to make everyone feel important and when he met them. And that won't, there aren't a lot of people that can say everyone's unique, but Bill Walton's unique. He is one of a kind. You know what I mean? And when you lose one of a kind people who's really everything about them was to push, he said it, he wanted to make people's lives better. That's what his whole goal was. When you lose that, it's felt. And so that's how I felt. Very sad. And glad that I did get to meet him and talk to him and, have a personal understanding of who Bill Walton is, not just the guy on TV.
Yeah, I was trying to rack my brain. I don't believe. Well, there's no way I would have forgot if I met him.
Yeah, you wouldn't have.
I think I've seen him around, but I never had a chance to talk to him. I was shocked because, like I said, I didn't know he was experiencing any health issues. I got a chance to talk to Lionel Hollins and Michael Thompson, who said similar things to what you just said, that he made everyone feel like they were special, no matter how well he knew you, or what walk of life you were from. He just had a way of making people feel special and giving people his attention, because he seemed to care about everyone. And so I agree with everything you said about him. He because I didn't know him, I didn't really watch him play other than with the Celtics. I remember those years.
The waving towels. That's what we remember.
Yeah, exactly.
The waving the towel.
8 points a game on that team that won the title. But, those were a vital 8 points. That was a pretty good team.
And he was a sixth man of the year. So what kind of impact that is.
Exactly. And
how his other teammates respected him.
Right. And he was sixth man of the year with the 8 points a game and 8 rebounds or whatever, ahead of guys who scored a lot more than him. Yeah. But it was he was a sixth man on a championship team doing some dirty work, whatever. But he's just one of those guys that you just know is out there doing his thing. And he's going to pop up somewhere and you're going to appreciate and enjoy him. And I used to debate with people on Twitter about him as a broadcaster because people would trash him and get this guy out of here. And I thought Bill Walton, I described it. I said this to Michael Thompson the other day. I said it was sort of like watching a game with maybe the little quirky uncle who actually knows what they're talking about. But he's saying things where you're like, what are you saying? And I'll never forget a Ducks game I was watching. I might have been covering it from TV. I think it might have been in Hawaii or something. But anyway, I think Dorsey or someone committed a turnover, and Walton goes, "Oh my God, that was the 13th worst turnover in the history of the program." And I just busted out laughing. I was like, what? Like the fact that he came up with to say it was one of the worst. He didn't say it was one of the worst. He said it was 13th.
13th.
As if
not 12.
He had him ranked. Like he had a ranking.
Someone got moved out.
25 ever. And he automatically was like, I'm placing that 13th. But it was that kind of randomness that actually it's something that I kind of do a little bit myself. I like just make up a number and throw it out there.
Sure.
So I kind of like identified with, but you're doing it tongue in cheek. But I just thought it was just hilarious. And I love that about him because he just made the games sound more interesting because he was just talking about stuff. And he'd bring it. He almost did it like a baseball commentator. Because in baseball commentary, you tell stories because you're filling dead air.
Gotta fill, not in basketball.
Because baseball's so slow. But he did that in basketball. He started telling a story about something that happened or something that had to do with where the game was being played and that area or its history. And it's just, I thought he was magnificent as a commentator. So no personal relationship with him, but I definitely appreciated all he brought to the table. So let's get to his legacy. His legacy as a Blazer. It's very interesting because he was only here for a few years. He didn't leave on good terms, but he made by far the greatest individual impact any player ever has. But when people talk about the greatest players, they talk about Dame and Clyde mainly because they played longer in Blazers uniforms. But I'll let you start. I have my opinion on this. I've had for years, but I'll let you go with this. What do you think his legacy is in Portland? How would you define it?
He brought them the only championship they ever had, and they don't win it without him. Like it's that simple. You got one, and you got one because of Bill Walton and how it ended up. And the next year he was better, and
MVP
and couldn't stay healthy, right? So, and I don't know if he was better. I didn't see it. I'm just saying statistically, and that he won the MVP.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, he's the most impactful Blazer, I think, because he won the only championship, and that's what when you talk about franchises as a someone who covers it as a fan, what matters is winning. It doesn't necessarily matter how much money the team's making. That's not what we're supposed to evaluate.
Right.
And he won the championship. The best player on the court wasn't their leading scorer because he was cool with that and he averaged like 18 plus that year, but they do not win a title without Bill Walton. And until you get another one, he stays on the top, as far as impactful. Is he the greatest Blazer of all time? We've discussed this and gone through this. There's so many arguments to that win. Like, you want to say Damian Lillard? Okay. Do you want to say it was Clyde Drexler? Okay. Do you want to say it's Bill Walton? Okay. But nobody can take away the fact that he's got the one championship. And they don't win. You look at the 77 team and you see they're all retired. They retired all their numbers. And Maurice Lucas was great, but Bill Walton was why they won the title. Like the rest of the team had roles. And he was the straw that stirred that drink. And so his legacy in Portland is that guy. And if you were around in 77, which I was not, but everyone I've talked to, he meant everything. I mean, he was riding his bike to the parade. He was playing soccer in the park. He was drinking beer at the bar. Like he embraced. That was
back when you did things like that. When pros did things like that.
Right.
You've heard of Irving Park, right?
Yeah.
Famous Irving Park. Dude, when I was a kid. And I came to Portland in my first time, I think in 79. I went back and forth, a long story, but Blazers would show up at Irving Park and just play basketball.
Just ball.
Nothing, right?
Just ball.
So anyway, continue on.
So I'm just saying, like that kind of impact that he made on the city. It's a shame that 50 years later, that's their only title, and the comparisons are to other players that had longer careers. Now, how it ended was ugly with lawsuits. I'm so glad that I was here in 2009 when he came back, and hearing him talk about apologizing to how some of it, taking some responsibility. But I mean, he couldn't have been. He wasn't happy how things treated on the medical side. And I'm so glad that he was able to make amends, no matter how that happened. And also that back pain that was so excruciating that caused him to question whether or not he wanted to live, and that he found solutions for that, and that he was able to be happy. But I don't think that it's a shame that even it's 50 years since that title, and that impact has almost been watered down amongst the younger people and people that came to Portland later, so that there wasn't that understanding. I don't think everyone understands how, what he meant to the Blazers organization, but you chisel him in the stone, right? I mean, there's no doubt.
100%. So first things first, it's a shame that the unquestioned top three all had their careers with the Blazers ended in a negative light. That's a shame. We're not going to debate it, why that happened, whose fault, blah blah blah. But it's just kind of a shame. For me, I'm gonna go with a three-way tie, only because I think each one checks boxes that someone else doesn't check. Dame, most beloved, clearly, and the points record, and him being loyal, et cetera, et cetera. Clyde was, to me, a better all-around player than Dame, other than the three-point shooting, because Clyde was bigger, so Clyde could defend better, and Clyde could do things with his size that Dame could not do. But Walton, if we're saying straight up best player, not greatest Blazer, because greatest encompasses so many things. If we're saying the very best player, it's clearly Walton. If you were having a draft and you had a choice to pick between the three, you're taking Walton. The only reason why anyone would entertain that you wouldn't take Walton is because of the injuries. But in my conversation with Thompson, we talked about how, Thompson came into the league the year Walton sat out after he was MVP. And Thompson talked about how he was so excited to play with Walton and play with Lucas, and how he, in his mind, we're about to rattle off championships. Like, we're going to keep winning, because they won the one. They were the favorites to win the next one when Walton got hurt when they were 50-10. He played 60 games and still got the MVP. And he was only 25. So if you say he's healthy for the next 10 years, that takes them into the 80s. Where, they're battling out with Magic and Kareem. They're battling out with maybe Bird, Celtics. And then, of course, Moses Malone goes to the 76ers, et cetera, et cetera. But at that point already, Walton had already beaten Kareem. He'd already beaten the Doc, right? So he'd already established himself as a true number one marquee elite talent. No one else in Blazers history can say that.
No.
I don't care what your records were. I don't care how many All-Star games, all NBA or whatever. No one else can say they were MVP. No one else can say they were the true number one catalyst for a championship team. And a team that, like Walton and Lionel Hollins said the same thing, probably wins multiple titles if he's able to remain healthy, because he was that good. And the fact that they
might have gotten better.
Right. Well, they added Thompson to that. Thompson was the number one pick in the draft.
No, I mean, but Bill Walton might have gotten better.
Bill, because he was.
Like, it wasn't. He hadn't hurt at 28.
He hadn't hit his prime yet, right? So, I mean, it just compounds the bad luck that the Blazers franchise has endured, right? But for me, the best player, period, is Walton. The greatest is a three-way tie, because Walton gave you the title and MVP. Clyde was just so amazing and only got denied titles mainly because of Jordan and Magic, right, and the Bad Boy Pistons. And then Dame has the numbers and the length of career and the All-NBAs and the All-Stars and the scoring title, and most beloved probably in the city than any Blazer ever.
Yeah, so I'll say two things. One, a huge cop-out to go with a three-way tie. Just huge cop-out.
But no, for greatness. No, it's not a cop-out, because all check different boxes.
I'll create categories so I don't have to pick one.
See, I think I'm
like
going
it.
high and intellectual with this, and you're saying it's a cop out. See, that's why.
Well, there's no fun in arguing. It's so fun that you can't argue the fact that you list the three guys that would be in the argument. The thing that's funny about it is there's no four, right? Nobody's like throwing. I mean, even and Maurice Lucas was great. Terry Porter was great. But there's no one like, four is so far away from three.
Who would be four? Aldridge, Roy, Lucas.
No, Petrie maybe.
Yeah.
But there's no reason to go through it.
It's way down the line.
Yeah, of course. If we're starting today, you say you have a season, you're picking today. They're all healthy to start the day. Of course, it's not even close that you go with Bill Walton. I mean, he's also huge.
Right.
He was huge, and he was so good defensively at the top. As a college player, I mean, he's probably the greatest maybe the greatest college player ever.
And that's the other part, right? He won back-to-back national titles, but lost the third one, right? They went undefeated
and they were like,
years.
he
was like 86-4 in his career or something like that.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know,
it's ridiculous. And and he won 2 state titles in high school. I mean, he said he got hurt when he was 12. He said that was it. His prime was when he was 12, and he hurt his leg the first time. That's what stinks is that he had so many injuries and he could never. I mean, I think he missed 3. He sat out 3 full seasons where he didn't play a game. And everyone. While what I do remember is that when they were talking about the Celtics and that year, that he still wasn't. He could only play what he could play. He couldn't play more minutes because his body just couldn't hold up. And maybe the best passing big man of all time. I mean, of course, there's debates. Sabonis is a similar thing. We didn't get to see him in the top of his game, but
Jokic. Well, Walton called him Jokic before Jokic in terms of being a passing big man. Walton said he's right there with Jokic.
Yeah, I mean, they're who's greatest? Of course, Jokic is great, but he did. Everyone said no one could throw an outlet pass like him. I mean, these are all things that you and I, who are not young, didn't get to see really. But we've heard from so many people and seen film, right? And the great ones are the ones that you believe. And the ones that played with him and that saw him. I mean, Larry Bird, talks about how great he was and could be if he were healthy. So that part is sad. That he was only 71 is sad. Of course, everyone's talking about the irony and coincidence that he would not live to see the Pac-12 not have a conference, and but that's the thing. Like he was also the biggest cheerleader for the Pac-12, so everyone in the Pac-12 attached to him. When you're talking about him as a broadcaster, I just used to, it used to infuriate me that people would try to, like, what they would say. The criticism about him was he wasn't a great, broadcaster. Like, duh, that's not what he's doing. He's Bill Walton. No one put him on the air because he was going to give necessarily the most, the best data. Like his data was 13th worst turnover with nothing to back it up.
In history.
Right. But he was so enthusiastic and funny. And of course I used to throw stuff, get mad at him at the TV. Like that's the dumbest thing but that's the whole thing. It made it interesting rather than others that might be great. But in broadcasting, the best always get ridiculed. I mean, if they're different. Howard Cosell. I mean, how many people hated Howard Cosell? But everyone knows who Howard Cosell was, even if you never heard him at all. Like I didn't really hear Howard Cosell, but everyone knows who Howard Cosell is. And if you watch college basketball and NBA, even though he didn't do a lot later, you had an opinion about Bill Walton.
Right.
And that's a win, right? If you're hiring, that's what you want. Everyone knows. Everyone, in this industry now, that's what you have. It's not just everyone who loves him, it's the fact that there was an opinion of him. But it was hard to hate on Bill Walton. I mean, you're a special kind of person if you hate on Bill Walton, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just don't know why you would watch a college basketball game and care much at all about what the color commentator is, let alone to the point where you hate it because you don't understand it, or maybe it doesn't make sense, or it's quirky. Like what are you doing with
embrace
your life?
Embrace it. It's entertainment. He was again, unique.
Right.
God, he said
Exactly.
stupid things. Of course he did. And I will tell the last story I'll say is I remember the first time I interviewed him, I was in awe. After that, as a TV person that gets limited time, interviewing Bill Walton was a challenge. You can't break Bill Walton up into 18
Bill,
seconds.
we got 5 minutes. 20,
Right,
20
like,
hours later. Bill, my follow-up question.
Right. So you have a radio show, you give him a segment. In TV, you get 3 total minutes, right, for everything. So you got a very small thing. But he was at like a Good Feet in Salem, and I couldn't get out there because I was in Portland. So we had a photographer, a cameraman go, and I was like, "Hey, can you go?" And he's like, "Well, what should I ask him?" I was like, "It does not matter." I'm like, "You just say, what do you want to talk about, Bill?" And he's going to talk about why he's there, and then just let him go. And I remember he said, the guy called me back after. He's like, "Oh man, you're right. I think the first answer is 11 minutes." I was like, "Yeah." I mean, that's who he was. Like, he was also very smart. Like, he knew what he wanted to talk about, and that's what he would talk about. So I always
what he wanted to talk about.
What he wants to talk about. Like, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you want to talk about. He's there for a reason, and he's going to do it. But I mean, you hear so many things about people that knew him. You and I both know Jim Taylor, former Blazers head of communications, right? And they were tight because they had so many things in common. And he would just tell great stories about just showing up at music venues, just going for bike rides, and that energy that just flowed off him. So I didn't know him personally, like as far as other than interviewing him, but we all knew people that did, and no one was trashing, like, and you get that a lot, like no one was trashing Bill, like behind his back, like, "Oh, that's not," I mean, was he a bit of a caricature? Of course, but he was for good.
Yeah, agreed.
He'll be missed.
Definitely. All right, should we talk about these Blazer workouts? They started them last week. They're bringing in some dudes. The Blazers have the 7th and 14th pick, plus 34 and 40 in the second round. The draft is at the end of June. The most notable 4 names thus far: Kel'el Ware out of Indiana, who also played 1 year at Oregon, center. Jalen Tyson, a wing from Cal. Adem Bona, whatever. Sorry, I suck at names. My bad. UCLA, big man. And Tyler Smith, forward out of the G League. Those are the 4 guys they've brought in so far who, according to most mock drafts, they're going to go somewhere in the first round. And all of them, like, their stock is just bouncing up and down based on what the draft is, because it's just that kind of draft.
None of them are going to be the 7th. None of them are going to be the 7th pick.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I was going to get to that. So, yeah, none of these. Okay, the only, like, Jalen, one mock had him top 15. And so to me he's a possibility to be maybe a lottery guy, but questions about his athleticism and other things. But this draft is considered weak and not deep, and therefore, if one mock draft might have you 12, you might go 25th. One might have you 25th, you might go 10. Like, that's how crazy it's going to be, I think. That's why the Blazers are going to bring in a ton of people. They brought in a bunch of guys today. All of them, or 4, were projected as second round picks. 2 probably undrafted guys. The main top 10 dudes are going to start coming in, I believe, next week. In the coming week, starting next week, we'll start seeing the guys projecting in the top 10. But the guys are bringing in, like, if every mock has a guy between 20 and 30, and you're picking 14th, you have to see. And again, the mocks don't supersede the scouting. What I'm saying is that the team has to see something special in that person to obviously take them at 14. If the community is saying, they're 25th, right? And that does happen all the time. Or you find a pocket of guys you like just as much as you like the guy projected to go 14th, and you trade back, and you maybe pick up an asset and still get one of the pocket of players that you want. So that's why you look at these players. Plus, all these guys projected to go in the late 20s could fall into the second round where you pick 34th, where you could get some of those guys. And so that's why you do your due diligence on all this stuff. And, it's interesting. Like, I'm watching highlight videos, I'm watching scouting videos, I'm reading up on them to try and, educate myself to a certain extent as we get closer to the draft. But it's kind of all over the place right now. So the main question, though, is, Craig, if you're sitting there at 7 or 14th, are you taking need? Or are you taking best fit.
So I'm taking need all day.
Or sorry, best talent. Best talent.
I mean, I'm taking best talent all day.
Best talent. Yeah.
All day. You're not good. You're not good. You're not good. Like, and if you're going to pass over a great player because he's a guard, because you have other guards that you don't know are great, I mean, go for the best. You got 4 picks in this draft. You don't have 4 slots. So, yes, I'd rather you get a big. Or the thing that's interesting is almost all the mocks have the Blazers picking a guard or a center, which we just discussed that's their strongest. But like I've seen, the big kid from Connecticut, who we all got to see, win a national title twice, and 7'3" and show all this talent. Like I've seen him be picked 3 and picked by the Blazers at 7 in mocks and go 9 and go 6. Well, I wouldn't let him go 6 if I love him. I'm trading up. What I would say is the Blazers need to decide who they think is the best player in this draft and do everything they can to get that player. And I'm talking even if they think it's Sarr. I mean, like, I just think you have your assets. You need to find a one. You need to find the great player, and you don't know if you have it yet because we all know that superstars make this league, and you got to find them. And if you find them in way down if you find them in the second round, if you get a Jokic, you get lucky, or you get him down at 18, you get lucky. But in this draft with 2 first rounders, I would much rather go all in to try to find the one than get more role players.
Right. I agree. And if they identify someone in the top 3 or 4 and you have to trade 7 and 14 to move up,
absolutely.
If someone's interested in doing that because they like someone they could get at 7 and they get 14 on top of it and they're not sold on the guy maybe you love, then yeah, you try to do it. I agree. Like I've joked about if they draft another point guard, it's a calamity. It's blah, blah, blah. But in reality, if you're sitting there and you're like, okay, by far the best player available right now is a guard. Yes, we need forwards, but the forward we're going to take, we don't necessarily think is better than the 4 young forwards we already have. So we're just adding a 5th to that mix. Yes, we're redundant at guard, but this guy's way better than whomever we're going to get. And we don't know yet if Scoot or Shaden are going to be stars. We think they're going to be, but we don't know. And if they are stars, guess who needs to go? Ant. And if Ant's gone, you're going to need some backup, so you might as well take right? So you might as well take one of these young guards that you like, and he ends up being a backup. And who knows? He might end up being better than one of the 2 young guards you have, right?
Or here's the other thing. You're not trying to win.
Exactly. So your lineup doesn't matter. Just accumulate talent. And Cronin has basically said this, right? And now with center, like you mentioned, it's Klingon, right? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah, Klingon.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He's projected to go top 5 in many of these drafts, but let's say you trade up to get him or he falls to you at 7. Okay, I have Ayton. Am I really committed to Ayton?
Heck no.
Do I really? He had a great last month and a half, but am I really? He got 2 years left on his deal. Am I convinced I'm going to give this guy, because the cap is about to go bonkers. They're talking about people making $75 million a year, 80, 90, right? So am I going to give Ayton $55 million a year? Am I ready to do that? I don't know. I got to see a lot, right? Williams, you've talked about this all the time. I'm trying to give the Blazers credit for having depth at center, and you're like, dude, one guy can't play. So are they going to trade Williams, or is he never going to be healthy? Because if he's not, or you trade him, that means Reith is your backup. Is Reith really a number 2 center on a good team?
No.
Okay, so then if I don't want him as my number 2, then I'm not passing up on this kid as my number 2.
Well,
Because he might eventually be my number 1 if I don't want to pay Ayton. And he's the same age as my 2 young guards. So as much as I joke about they don't need a center, at the end of the day, if he's the best player on the board, you take the center. You deal with it later.
And also, by the way, we've got a smorgasbord of role players on our team. If you'd like one of them, to throw in, and there's guys that can play, and that there's teams that are close, right? Or they don't, or they're looking. I just say to not it's hard for me to believe that a franchise that didn't draft Michael Jordan because of, and
because of need.
Because of need, would even think about it. Like, I don't like, what are you talking about? I mean, the greatest line that Bobby Knight probably said is when he said that you should pick Michael Jordan after, he coached for Team USA.
He's the best player I've ever seen.
And they said, well, the Blazers need a center. And he said, well, I'd play him at center.
Exactly.
Like,
he warned.
You're not even close. You don't even have Clyde Drexler. You don't have Clyde Drexler. So stop. Like, and I'm not saying Michael Jordan's in this draft because he's not. But, and I just think that why would you think you need to, like, that it would matter that you'd pick a great point guard? Jason Kidd did not, Steve Nash did not start on, he was on a different team when he got drafted. Like, you could trade players and get stuff too, it happens all the time to having repetition at a spot is only problematic when you have one more need. When you have one more need.
Right.
Like,
when you're good,
you're
weak
close.
somewhere else. Yeah.
This team is 4 years away in a best case scenario from really being a contender. What do you see? There's no way Ant's on this team in 4 years if Scoot's still here. So what are you worried about of getting another one? Now, I hope that they see that it ends up being, forwards that they feel are the best. But that's not what this draft is shaping out to be necessarily. There are a lot of guards and centers that people are putting high up. So I would just, I just wouldn't even think about caring about what we have. I mean, if it's close, sure. Yeah, if it's close, you're like, I don't know. We want I like the 6'3" and the 6'8" guy. Well, then you go 6'8". Of course, it's something you measure. But if you're like, well, this guy's a starter in the NBA and this guy's I know this guy's going to be a starter. I believe in my heart of hearts that Shepard's going to be, I hate to sound like, a great, player. I don't even know who he could be, but then you get it. Then you take him because that's what you need. And you need talent and you need to trade talent.
He can shoot. You need shooting. So,
and you know who needs shooting? Every single team in the NBA.
But the Blazers need it more than anyone because they rank last in 3-point shooting.
But the Knicks need shooting. You know what I mean? Like, and they're close. They don't. I mean, I love Hart, but he's a terrible shooter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, the Blazers.
He went to the league. He was pretty decent too. That's weird. It seems like it got worse. So here's a guy like Bleacher Report right now has the Blazers taking Dalton.
All right, got to tell you, talking to Mike, you passed the mic.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
I always yell at Fentress if we keep this in. Because he gets excited and he moves closer and he goes past the mic.
I'm trying to see my screen here. All right. Dalton Connect, Tennessee, guard forward. Listed here 6'5", not ideal for a 3. So he's probably more of a shooting guard. He can shoot it, but here's the pro comparison. Wally Zerbiak. That's this draft for you right there. That defines this draft.
Wally Zerbiak was good, man.
No, he was not. No, he was not.
He was good.
He was okay. He's from
Long Island, baby. I'm not dissing my Long Island.
Don't make me look him up. I'm not even gonna look him up. I'm not gonna play that game. You don't want to end up with a Wally Zerbiak. But that might be what you end up with in this draft. That's the problem.
Well,
here's
better than a guy that, like, Stephen Castle's a guy that is right. He's a tall guard. Maybe he's 6'6", point guard, shooting guard in the NBA, and he's 6'6". I mean, if you love that guy, I mean, he's in a lot of mock drafts headed to the, that people have picked him for Portland.
So here's a guy, like, for whatever reason, he's projected number 8 by Bleacher Report. It's Ron Holland, who's young, 18, 19, 6'7", pencils out as a small forward, G League Ignite, tons of holes, but defensively, he's already considered to be pretty solid for his age. Like, he projects as being a pretty good defender, and he has the ability to score at every level. So for me, if I'm going to roll the dice here, I'd rather have the 18, 19-year-old guy with tremendous upside than the older veteran guy like the Tennessee kid who probably is just what he is. And I roll the dice on someone like Holland, who I think has a better upside. So that's where I'm drafting for, maybe a higher ceiling, and I'm getting a position of need as opposed to taking a guy who maybe already is what he is. But I do not want to say Rob Dillingham, guard out of Kentucky, who's 6'1". I don't want him. But if he's the best player available, then I'm taking him.
I mean, that's a guy who's in the top 10 in like every mock. So, he's got to be good. And he's also skinny, so there's that. I mean, it's not just the size.
He's 6'1",
164. Yeah. But then, you look up and there's guys in the, Cody Williams is 6'8" and 180. So you want to talk about a guy not physically ready to play in the NBA at 180? You know what I mean? That's 6'8". Like that's not a guy that can guard, many people. We talk about, Grant would eat him for lunch, at his size. So, but again, we're not looking at winning next year. And that when you talk about, 22 years old, that used to be, real young, but now everyone you want to be 19, the way your team is. So it doesn't matter if he weighs 180 now. What's he going to weigh in 3 years, right? And that's hard, man. That is hard as a fan. That is hard, especially when you're getting older. Like, you're like, 3 years? Like, seriously? I got to be worried about 3 years? And it's hard for a franchise in flux. I mean, we've already talked about the coach, having wandering eyes. He's going to be a lame duck pop. Looks like a lame duck's happening. So therefore, the franchise is not, not feeling like that guy is going to be there. Right. Cronin's a first-time GM that got handed the job, hasn't, didn't necessarily, didn't win it in an interview. And I don't care what anyone says about Joe Cronin. I think he's a nice guy. I think he's smart. I think he knows the salary cap. But this is not, since he's taken over, these are not good results. Like, this is not good. Like, no one's going to grade this as an A. You're grading on a curve of implosion. Maybe you could get to a C. Like, well, he was supposed to blow it up. He did it. He definitely did it, right? He definitely blew it up. But I'm not, when you look at this draft, there's so many guys. Of course, the guys I saw, I'm like, oh, I like that. I have no idea about these guys that are playing, overseas and in the G League. So you just got to hope that your scouts know better, because no one knew who Jokic was. And now now he's won 3 MVPs and he won a title, right? So, and he's super young. But, that's right now. It used to be 20 years ago, you'd know every guy. You know every guy because they all play they all played in college, and maybe there's one European player that you didn't know, but you knew him, and so you're like, that guy's good, And but if you go by what we see, Nolan Jones is playing, because So
listen to this real quick. This is Bleacher Report. They do like an NBA comparison. So I'm not going to give you the comparison, the player they're comparing them to. I'm going to give you the NBA player they're comparing these young guys to, but not give you the match. So this is in order from 1 on down: Harrison Barnes, Evan Mobley, Rudy Gobert, Goran Dragic, Anthony Black, Dante DiVincenzo. DiVincenzo, my bad.
DiVincenzo.
Wally Zerbiak, Cam Whitmore, Darius Garland, and then number 10, Jaden McDaniels. Those are your projections.
Well, it's a little weird when you're projecting guys that haven't projected yet.
I'm just saying, there's no like.
No, I'm just saying, like, you're comparing them to guys.
Gobert's good.
Absolutely.
Harrison Barnes is solid,
very good.
But and I had one other guy. Oh, Evan Mobley is an up and coming young player.
Sure,
that's your like. There's no Luka. There's no
well, not only that. What I'm saying is LeBron, like McDaniels,
no Kobe.
But like even McDaniels and Mobley, like we don't know what they are yet, and that's
right.
The projection. The projection is still being projected. Like, it's not like, at least you can make an opinion about Wally Zerbiak, and but we don't know. And Mobley looked great, but he could get better.
My point is, they're not even comparing these guys to a host of great players.
I'm doubling up on it in the fact that we're not even finding they're not even looking past, 5 years.
Right.
Like we're.
Well, Cam Whitmore was a rookie last year. They're
Right,
comparing
that's
him
what
to
I'm saying.
Cam
Like,
Whitmore.
we have no idea what
Whitmore.
Cam Whitmore's going to be.
Exactly.
Like we don't know. It's like comparing someone to Scoot. Like what? Like we're not there yet. That guy might be awesome. He might not. But that the other thing is that the Blazers have such. There's nothing they could do, in my opinion, that is silly at a position. Other people will. And if they bend to not drafting what they think is the best, we'll never know. You know what I mean? Like, because none of these guys are like, it's not like Sam Bowie, Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? We're not looking at that. I mean, last year, if you had Miller and Scoot, at least that they could have flipped, right?
Right. Ideally,
and
that would have flipped.
And right, for the Blazers right now, ideally it would have. But there's at least a thing. If you draft Miller and Scoot went crazy because you didn't want a point guard, right, then you'd be able to say, oh, you blew it. But we don't know these guys good enough. No one's projecting these guys in that form where and if anyone comes out of this and is a all NBA player, it feels like it's gonna surprise people. And somebody's gonna.
Yeah, of course.
Because it happens. Of course. So get lucky. That's it. Get lucky. The Blazers have plenty of bad luck.
But create your own luck.
Let's get some luck.
The worst case scenario is you take a guard or a center, right? Because you believe, okay, best player available.
Yeah.
But a couple forwards pop later.
Right.
And especially if someone pops in 25, like I hate it when people say, oh, the Blazers took Zach Collins at 10.
Yeah.
They could have had John Collins who went 19. It's like, come on, give me a break. Yeah.
It's not
18 people
not that great.
18
not that great
teams.
Anyway.
I'm just saying, but 18 teams passed on
right.
Collins, and about 12 of them regret it. So to blame the Blazers, like that kind of stuff, I don't like that. But if someone goes 9 or 10 who becomes an elite level forward, then you're pissed. Like Halliburton. Teams passed on Halliburton. Like my Bulls passed on Halliburton and took Wendell Carter. I think it was Wendell Carter. And they regret that now, right? So is everyone else. But and they needed a point guard, but those are the kind of things you can't make those kind of mistakes. All right. We good? You got anything to say about the Lakers and Bronny and JJ Redick?
I don't, when people mock JJ Redick, and obviously I grew up a North Carolina fan, so never a Duke fan, but I will say this, like Steve Kerr, great coach. So maybe he's a great coach. I don't.
I think it's just so. I think Golden State made a calculated decision based on what they thought Kerr could actually do with a young Splash Brothers. I think this is all just like pomp and circumstance with no substance. Prove me wrong, but I just don't. And I'm not saying Redick can't even be a good coach. I'm just saying that this situation is a situation where they're not going to contend, and he's going to be the blame, and he's going to get fired. So, who knows? We'll see.
That might be true. But I'm just saying, like, I was so excited when I thought Derek Fisher was going to be a great coach for the Knicks. Everyone thought it was going to be great. It was not. It was not great. And now Derek Fisher, no one thinks Derek Fisher's a great coach. You know what I mean? Right. Like it's weird. Jeff Van Gundy got fired, and the longer the longer he stayed away from the league, the better a coach he got.
Better coach he became.
And like everyone thinks John Gruden was going to be a great coach. I was like, I don't think he was a great coach ever. Like when you look back at his record, I mean, I don't see
he took over a contender. He added a slightly better quarterback.
Yeah,
But
over
they won the Super Bowl. But over time, it went backwards.
It becomes great, because he was a broadcaster, and you're like, well, I'm not sure. I mean, I felt the same way about Chip Kelly. I'm like, I don't know why people keep thinking he's a great coach. He had a great run at one place, and everywhere else he was really, really, really not good. Mediocre was best. So, was he a great coach at Oregon? Absolutely, he was. But he didn't have a track record. I mean, he was really good as an assistant in New Hampshire. I was saying the coaching things, to me, you just don't know. Why I keep saying that if everyone thought that Chauncey Billups had this potential to be a great coach, nothing he's done here should say that he can't, because none of this has been his fault.
Right.
Now, maybe a coach can show me his bad coaching, and then I could say, oh, okay. And I have that experience. When I was in college as a manager on a basketball team, I sat and watched film, tape after tape with head coach, assistant coach, and they would see things that I did not see. You know, I know what a coach does every single day because I lived that, and I know I didn't have it. You know what I mean? I didn't know that amount. So maybe, but to judge coaches before they coach is interesting to me, and I never do it. JJ Redick, clearly people know what he knows about basketball, you know, and can he motivate? Can he motivate? And will they give him a chance?
Can he strategize? Can he make in-game adjustments? Can he relate to superstars? Can he do anything that comes along with coaching? Yeah, I'm not even saying he can't do any of it. It just feels completely manufactured. The whole podcast thing with LeBron, the fact that LeBron's had 7 coaches now in 12 years or something like that. I just think it's one of those things where
he's only had one.
I just think it's something. I just feel it feels very manufactured and desperate, and that it's not going to work because they're not a contender, and so they're not going to win. And then Redick's going to get blamed, and he's going to fire it anyway. So.
Right, we're going to get a big fat paycheck and he'll have it on the resume.
I don't blame him for doing it, but once he does it and fails, he can't go back to broadcasting and criticize coaching because everyone's going to say, hey, what about you? You got LeBron and Anthony Davis. So we'll see. All right, we're good?
We're good.
We're good. All right, thanks for listening to the Blazer Focus podcast. Again, our condolences to the Trail Blazers world and Bill Walton's family for the passing of a certain NBA legend. We'll be back with more Blazer workout news. They're going to start bringing in some heavy hitters next week, and we'll catch you then.